Jen and Yvonne, what are the best neighborhoods to live in Düsseldorf? We've received this question so many times and we've been a little bit hesitant to answer it, but here we are in this video trying our best to answer this question. The quick answer is that it depends. It depends on your lifestyle, what you're looking for, are you with family or not, how old you are, it's 1,000 of variables. So our goal with this video is not to tell you which is the best neighborhood to live in Düsseldorf, but to paint a picture of this beautiful city and its different neighborhoods, so you have an idea of where to aim your apartment search, or maybe what you're looking for, if it matches.
Yeah, what to expect. Since we've been living in this city for already so long, it's actually been 12 years. That was a very crazy realization.
Yeah.
We feel comfortable talking about it. But please always bear in mind this is our perspective and you might experience different areas from a different perspective.
In this video, we will talk about Düsseldorf in general, as well as the neighborhoods that are in the city center, the coolest, the most family friendly, closest to nature, the most expensive, the cheapest, and the most Japanese friendly. If you're curious about Japanese friendly, I guess you're gonna have to stick around. Additionally, we will also talk about the neighborhoods we would not want to live in and why. Hey, my name is Jen and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create English content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. So let's start with Düsseldorf, the general gist.
Düsseldorf is the state capital of NRW, North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, which is actually the most populated, the most densely populated state in Germany. Geographically speaking, if you take the German map, it's pretty much in the center west. It has over 600,000 inhabitants and is with that size the 7th largest city in Germany. According to the latest statistics, 23.8% of the population in Düsseldorf is international.
And as a fun fact, the Japanese community in Düsseldorf is the 3rd largest in all of Europe. This is after London and Paris, which is crazy. We have what locals like to call Little Tokyo.
There are 50 different neighborhoods in Düsseldorf, which are divided into 10 different boroughs or districts, which we will highlight later on.
Yes, we will not talk about the whole 50 neighborhoods, otherwise, oh my God, we're here hours. The cool events in Düsseldorf happen in what we like to call the activity zone. When we look at the activity zone on the map, it is actually quite a small area compared to the whole city. The main or the biggest activities in Düsseldorf or events happen in districts 1 and areas of districts 2, 3, and 4.
Pretty much the city center. For 10 years, Jen and I mostly only moved around this activity zone. We had absolutely no reason to leave it other for like very exclusive one-time events maybe. This changed a little bit when we moved over a year ago and we will talk about it later on in the video why.
Now let's start with the city center neighborhoods. The heart of the city are in the neighborhoods that are Altstadt, Karlstadt, and Stadtmitte. These 3 neighborhoods belong to District 1. Other neighborhoods that also belong to the same district are Pempelfort, Derendorf, and Goldsheim.
If you live in any of these neighborhoods, you're just a stone's throw away from the action. Derendorf might be a little bit further away, but still totally accessible. Most of the bigger events in the city happen in that area. That could be the Japan Day, the Jazz Festival, the French Festival, the different fashion events, the Gourmet Festival, the Gay Pride, and the Carnivals Parade, just to name a few. There's one more major event, and that is the Kirmes, like the local and biggest fun fair that is not really happening in District 1, but just across the Rhine on the other side, so still very close to it. So that really completes this activity zone.
The city center on a weekend or in the evenings is packed with both locals and tourists, especially if the sun is shining on a Saturday. Boy, you find thousands of people there. The Altstadt is known as the largest bar in the world because...
Longest bar in the world.
Longest bar in the world because there's over 300 different bars, clubs, restaurants, drinking zones in this whole area. So it's very easy to go from, let's say, an Irish pub to a very traditional German brewery to a very Schlager-oriented club to a rock club. I mean, there's a variation of things in the Altstadt.
And it's called the longest bar because those over 300 venues are in a very dense square meter area, which is actually the smallest in the world with the most amount of venues. That's why it actually is called that way.
Yes, and if you are into partying, then you might be wanting to live close to this area. Pro and con is that everything is in this area, so if you don't want to have anything to do with partying, you just don't live by the Altstadt and it's solved.
In the Stadtmitte, you will also find the famous pedestrian zones in Germany and Europe where you don't have cars and you have shops lining the streets. But also, more importantly, in Düsseldorf, you will find Immermannstraße, which is not a pedestrian zone, but it is the heart of Little Tokyo, where you are really surrounded by Japanese culture, shops, restaurants, and any supermarkets, anything else Japanese.
Also in this area is the famous Königsallee, which is kind of like the Fifth Avenue or Champs-Élysées, if I said that correctly.
Champs-Élysées?
Of Düsseldorf, where you find the most expensive brands from Gucci. I actually don't know the most expensive brands, but you know, the fancy stuff.
Gucci's, Louis Vuittons, all of that.
Yeah.
And Düsseldorf is actually known to be Germany's capital of fashion, which is always underlined by that street and its area.
I want to highlight though that even though Düsseldorf is known as the capital of fashion, in my opinion, when you leave this area, people are dressed pretty normally. It's not like you're expected to be in a runway show every day in the city.
No. There's one more area of Düsseldorf that is part of the activity zone, but not in the District 1 or the city center zone, and that is the Medienhafen, the Media Harbor, which is a super modern area, very businessy, lots of office spaces, but also super cool, hip restaurants, lots of activity around the kind of like the Hafenbecken, like the area of the, how do you call that?
The harbor?
The harbor, yeah, with a little even yacht harbor and sports boat harbor and lots of events. For example, the triathlon that I participate in frequently happens there, and also other events on the water.
The marina.
The marina.
Yeah, that's what
there
I
you
wanted
go.
to say. The marina. Yeah. Now, which are the coolest neighborhoods?
We might be biased here, but we believe the coolest neighborhood of Düsseldorf to be Unterbilk, actually the neighborhood where we used to live for 10 years. From the beautiful, hip and very local Lorettostraße to the very busy Bilke Allee, that area just has so much to offer. It is very known for local shops, so not really big brands, and artsy cafes and restaurants, and it is really not touristy at all. It is a stone's throw away from the city center, from the Rhine, so anything is also navigable by foot or with a short tram ride.
Second one is Pempelfort. In Pempelfort, there's a very also known street in Düsseldorf, which is Nordstraße, and this one is packed also with restaurants and shops, and it's very vibrant and really big. In my opinion, my feeling at least, is that Nordstraße has a little bit more commercial feel to it versus like a Lorettostraße.
It's also a bit louder because the tram runs right through it versus Lorettostraße doesn't have that, right? So it's a little bit of a different feel.
Yeah.
And the third one is Flinger Nord, also with a famous street which is Ackerstraße. Also there you can find very cool local hip individual concept stores, cafes and stuff. However, we must say in our experience, the high time was maybe like 5 to 10 years ago, and nowadays some of those shops have closed already and they're a lot more dispersed. It's not the same experience as when you walk down Lorettostraße or Nordstraße.
Another area we really like is called the Zoo, not because there is a zoo, there was a zoo many years ago, but this area is called Zoo, like zoo, and it's in Düsseldorf. This also has a very local vibe to it. I used to live in this neighborhood before, and it has expanded and tremendously changed throughout the years. However, I think it's still a pretty cool place to hang out. Now, what are the most family-friendly neighborhoods in Düsseldorf?
To be honest, we would say any neighborhood is really family friendly and families live all over the place. So in this case, we looked at some data to give you a more factual answer.
I actually went down the rabbit hole to go to the city of Düsseldorf and find all kinds of statistics. And I found out that District 5 has the most amount of families living with children under 18 years old. The neighborhoods of District 5 are Lohausen, Kaiserswerth, Stockholm, Wittlar, Kalkum, and Angermund.
So pretty much the north of the city.
Yeah, pretty much away from the activity zone. Now, which neighborhoods are the closest to nature? I think first we need to define nature in Düsseldorf.
I was just gonna say, so there's no beautiful mountain range around Düsseldorf, which is one of our main complaints about the city. However, there are other areas of nature. For example, there is the Rhine, Germany's biggest river, which is usually surrounded by green areas and fields, which invite you to hang out, do sports and whatsoever. And then there's also forests. And they, as you can imagine, are usually a little bit more outside of the city center. Some popular neighborhoods with a lot more green areas are Benrath, which is in the south of the city. There you have a beautiful pink castle with a big castle park and, of course, lots of Rhine.
Lots of Rhine. You get lots of Rhine.
Yeah. Then you have Düsseldorf Hamm, which is actually a very small and often overseen neighborhood that is south of the Mediahafen, also very close to the Rhine and very close to Unterbilk, for example, with a walk or a bike ride. It is super residential and really there is nothing going on. Then you have Grafenberg, Rath and Gerresheim, which are more on the eastern area, the eastern side of the city. And they are all bordering the forest, the Grafenberger Wald, Aperwald. Pretty much there's also a big horse race track where there is some activity, to be honest, throughout the year. And this is really the closest neighborhoods to nature if you're not considering a green field as nature.
Yes, I have to point out actually that these forests are over 620 acres of forest. So there's a lot of hiking trails and mountain bike trails a little bit. It has a small hill or a few small hills. Anyways, it's a nice place to go and relax.
If we're continuing to the north, one has Kaiserswerth, which we actually moved to. And one of the reasons we moved here is to be closer to nature. And it is true, we do enjoy daily walks by the Rhine where we hear the birds chirping, we see the bunnies and the deer. We even saw an otter in a little creek here. But those are just small highlights of nature. It is definitely quieter, even though it's still lively. So that is another aspect of living outside of the city. And we cannot talk about Düsseldorf without talking about the other side of the Rhine, because the Rhine cuts through the city with the city center being on the right side and other areas being on the left side. And those areas would be Oberkassel and Niederkassel. Quite known also as fancy neighborhoods, but super close to the fields of the Rhine. Again, if you like green areas, an area to let your dog run free, those are great spots to be.
Now, which ones are the most expensive neighborhoods to live in Düsseldorf? We had a look at Statista, which is a statistical page, and based on rental prices of the neighborhoods in Düsseldorf, surprise, surprise, the most expensive ones are Karlstadt and Hafen.
Now, Karlstadt and Hafen, like the Mediahafen, are not surprisingly the most expensive because both don't really have many flats for rent, because it's more of a office businessy space. On Karlstadt, I would also think it's a lot of ownership there. So the least amount of availability with high prices makes them just more expensive per square meter.
And the most expensive residential areas are Oberkassel, Lohausen, and Vollmerswert. I have to be honest, throughout my years of living in Düsseldorf, when someone says they live in Oberkassel, everyone goes like, oh.
That's a bit of a stigma, yeah?
Yeah, so Oberkassel, I think, is perceived as the most expensive place to live in Düsseldorf, maybe.
If you're liking the content of this video, then please also be sure to like this video down there and subscribe to our channel if you'd like to watch more of us.
And if you would like to go the extra mile to support Simple Germany, you can do so by buying us a virtual coffee at simplegermany.com/coffee. We will drink it in a Düsseldorf coffee place. Thanks for your support. Now, what are the cheapest neighborhoods to live in Düsseldorf?
So we divide the section by the cheapest cool neighborhoods and the cheapest overall. Again, based on the rental prices according to the statistics. And the coolest cheap places to live are Flinger Nord, Stadtmitte, Friedrichstadt, Bilk and Pempelfort. So all actually quite central. I mean, that's why we chose them as the coolest.
Yeah.
However, if you're looking for the absolute cheapest neighborhoods based on the statistics, those would be Garath, Reisholz, Hubelrath, Hellerhof and Lierenfeld. And they are all outside of the activity zone, I would say in the outskirts of the city, which again makes sense. The further you're away from the action, the cheaper rent usually tends to get.
And I would say in my 12 years of living in Düsseldorf, I don't think I've ever visited any of those neighborhoods. So I have no idea how they look like or what's up in those zones.
Yeah. And what actually quite a few people do if they want to avoid the higher rents of living in a big city like Düsseldorf, they live in the surrounding smaller towns and commute into the city. Now there's 4 cities, smaller towns that are connected via the Stadtbahn, so like the tram of Düsseldorf. And those would be Neuss, Krefeld, Duisburg and Ratingen. Especially Ratingen is, should be considered part of Düsseldorf if you just look at the radius of where it is located. So that is definitely a cheaper living option. We mentioned the Japanese culture in Düsseldorf before, so now the question is, which are the most Japanese-friendly neighborhoods in Düsseldorf?
So for that, I also went down the statistics rabbit hole of the city of Düsseldorf, and I found that neighborhoods 4 and 1 have the most Japanese population by numbers of people that have registered in the city hall. Now, what is interesting is that 22% of internationals living in District 4 are Japanese. That is District 4, and we would say the area is Niederkassel maybe, and Oberkassel. In that part of the city, you will find the Japanese International School and the Japanese Culture House, which is called the Echo House. I'm pretty sure I maybe mispronounced it. Now, District 1, where we already mentioned where Little Tokyo is on Immermannstraße, it also has a relatively high level of Japanese people living there. According to statistics, 6.5% of the internationals living in that district are Japanese.
Now to the big question, where would we not live and why? Now first we'd like to say all neighborhoods are safe in Düsseldorf. There is really no area where you need to fear about anything. There is petty crime, of course, especially in the hotspots and the Altstadt, where there's, a lot of people in one space. However, that being said, we would not like to live in the area in and around the Hauptbahnhof, so the main central station. We've mentioned this in multiple videos before, and it just tends to be that the Hauptbahnhof in German cities, is not just Düsseldorf per se, is a little bit more grungy. You have more adult shops in the area, there is a little bit more homelessness, and it's just generally a little bit of a vibe that we personally don't want to live in.
Yeah, not only homelessness, it's also important to point out a lot of people that consume drugs in public also hang out in that area. In my experience, you kind of transverse the Hauptbahnhof quite often because it's the main train station. In my experience, I haven't seen these people be violent or dangerous towards myself. I just wouldn't want to live there because I wouldn't want to hang out there every day to go home. Now, because of this grunginess effect, the area around the main train station usually has lower rental prices. We know this couple who they found an amazing apartment quite big, relatively close to the main train station for really cheap money, and they were super happy there. I guess it's like we mentioned at the beginning, it's a lifestyle question, and if you're comfortable hanging out in such an area, then there's no reason why not.
Also, with the lifestyle that we like to live, we wouldn't want to live super far away from the activity zone. One of the reasons also we've never been in all of these outskirt neighborhoods because there's no reason for us to go there. That being said, we actually did move away from the activity zone if you look at the map. We moved to Kaiserswerth, which is all the way in the north. However, here we actually have a little small city center. It's quite lively, and most importantly, it's just a 20-minute train ride away from the activity zone, so we still have access to it whenever we want. Now, why did we move here? Why did we leave the activity zone? Why did we leave the best neighborhood of Unterbilk? And the answer is because we outgrew our apartment. It was simply too small, loud, and no longer sufficient for us.
Yes, and also we did make an effort to find an apartment in Unterbilk, but at the moment we didn't find anything that met our criteria and budget, which shows that when you're looking for an apartment in Düsseldorf, it's maybe better not to focus on one neighborhood and one specific place, because that's going to take ages to find an apartment. Not impossible. If you have the time, then by all means.
And the budget.
Yeah, and the budget, by all means. We have a friend who, she did not want to leave the Flingen area by no means, and it took her a very long time to find a flat. But she had the time, right? But for us, we didn't want to wait so long, so we expanded our search to multiple neighborhoods. We went to see apartments in Angermon, Bilk, other ones in Unterbilk as well.
In Hamm.
In
Niederkassel, in Grafenberg, so really all across the city. And for us, the criteria of the apartment was more important than the actual neighborhood, as long as the neighborhood still had something to offer.
Yes, and I must say through the apartment search, I was actually surprised to find new areas and neighborhoods in Düsseldorf. And who knows, you might be surprised in actually liking something that you didn't even know you were missing.
Because you never had it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if you're planning your move to Düsseldorf and you want to know more about the city and the 10 things we love about Düsseldorf, then make sure to check out the video here on the left. Until next time, tschüss!
But we believe the coolest neighborhood in Germany.
In all of Germany, yes. Zappendusterland and Lohausen.
We talked about the Japanese culture in Düsseldorf, so which are the most Japanese-friendly neighborhoods in Germany?